Spider-Man Brand New Day is the best Tom Holland Spider-Man has ever been. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, but I've come to the conclusion that even though we got a great Spider-Man, we unfortunately got an overstuffed MCU movie, not a Spider-Man movie. Because there are characters in this movie that should be taken out completely. They are completely useless and an annoyance in the story. And they're only there to give you a laugh, which the movie does enough on its own without them. This Spider-Man movie had a lot riding on it. Not only did it need to satisfy fans, but it also needed to tell a good story and lay the groundwork for another trilogy, and it does exactly that. There is a solid story in there, and it's not a bad movie by any means, but it gets diminished because of all the heavy lifting the film has to do to help set up Avengers Doomsday and the Mutant Saga after. That being said, I'd say that Spider-Man Brand New Day is Tom Holland's best Spider-Man film, but that's only if you take out Tobey and Andrew from No Way Home, of course. I would even say this is the best Spider-Maning we've ever seen in a Spider-Man movie. But the main thing that I wish was done different is the main villain. So if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and go watch it because we're about to get into a little bit of some spoilers. Now, it's no secret that Sadie Sink plays Jean Grey. That was leaked a long time ago. But the fact that she's the main villain of the story was kind of a bummer to me, especially because they had so many great villains from Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery and the promotional material. But in order for you to understand why I have some issues with the choices the movie made, I'm going to have to refresh your memory or get you up to speed on what happens. And I'm going to try and get you through this plot synopsis faster than Spider-Man could deliver a pizza.
Pizza time.
The movie opens up with a very sad, depressed Peter Parker who's still struggling from the aftermath of No Way Home. He still keeps up with his old friends on their social media posts on a regular basis. And in order to keep himself from falling into a deep depression, he fully embraces being Spider-Man. And this is when we get to see those awesome comic book montages, and as you would expect, he becomes a very valuable asset to New York.
They love me.
But problems quickly escalate when a new threat arrives. One that can use psychic possession to take control of anyone in the vicinity, and even displays this power by taking a giant tank and driving it through the city and attacking a government facility called the Department of Damage Control. But it's unclear why they attacked the facility, so Peter decides he needs answers, so he heads to see Yelena for help. And this is when you get a throwaway scene from her with some goofy dialogue that, if spoken with the characters in the opposite situation, I'm sure would spark some
Selective outrage.
So Yelena tells Peter that he should go speak with William Metzger, the man in charge of the DODC, who has no idea why it was attacked, but suspiciously enough, lets the Hand be hired as security after Spider-Man locked them up. Because in his words, all they needed was a good leader.
Granted. But it is the only way what comes next makes sense.
And around this time is when the subplot of the film is also heavily introduced, which is Peter activating some type of gene mutation that spikes his arachnid DNA, causing him to get organic webbing with heightened senses and increased strength. So Peter decides to show up to Empire State University to speak with Bruce Banner about his inhibitor device that stops him from turning into the Hulk. He gets Banner's advice so he can recreate his own version that'll help him stop his mutation, and also can use it to suppress Jean Grey's powers, who he finds out the identity of while she's legitimately terrorizing civilians, him, and MJ. She then has one of her mind control goons take her to Empire State, where she captures Bruce Banner, takes over his mind, and makes him become Professor Hulk, and has him break into the DODC building because she's looking for something called VMAX. And that's when Peter shows up with Punisher and a universal inhibitor device he developed, fights the Hulk, finally gets the inhibitor device on Jean Grey, hands her over to the DODC, and after that, he thinks all is good. But he finds out that he was lied to and has to go back and save Jean because they are using her powers to create a weapon. And this is when we get some flashback sequences explaining Jean Grey's origin a bit, and that she's really looking for her sister who died in the same room that Jean Grey is captured in now. But after the experiment makes her become significantly stronger, she freezes everyone in a certain range of the city to enact revenge. And this is when he has to stop her from murdering more people and defuse the situation completely. And in doing so, he decides to let Jean go into his head, where she sees a memory with Aunt May speaking to Peter, and inserts herself, and eventually comes to the realization that what she's doing is wrong. And then the Punisher accidentally shoots Peter while he's in the memory with Jean. He wakes up in the hospital and recovers. And then the movie ends with Peter introducing himself to Ned in person by doing their signature handshake and saying, "I'm Peter." And now that you have a little refresher of what happens, we can get into the nitty-gritty of this film. First off, it's very good visually. They take clear inspiration from the Insomniac Spider-Man games because he's webbing guys towards him and punching him. He's dodging gunfire. He's doing some of the same finisher moves. He's webbing guys to walls. It was really cool to see the inspiration. And it even included a police officer that works directly with Spider-Man named Detective Gene DeWolf, who's kind of a throwaway character to give Peter someone to talk to while he's Spider-Man. And to be honest, it reminds me of Yuri Watanabe from the video game. They're essentially doing the same thing, but DeWolf isn't particularly needed in the film, but I understand what they were going for. Another thing that I love about this film is how much Peter is actually in his Spider-Man suit, and especially the amount he has his mask on. I'd say he's masked for majority of the movie, which is so pleasant to see, because Marvel has this weird thing about always making their heroes take their masks off, or not even wear their helmets, especially when it comes to Spider-Man, or like what they did with Thor when they just don't have him ever wear his helmet. But now let's get to the real issues with Brand New Day, and the biggest being the villain. I don't like the idea of Jean Grey being the main villain, because for one, she's a hero, and two, this is a Spider-Man movie, and I feel like it's not an absurd expectation to want to see Spider-Man fight one of his villains in his own movie. And along with the fact that her character is legitimately murdering people for no reason, a great example is when she's mind controlling a man and lets him get hit by a taxi head on. This is a future X-Men member we are talking about, just letting people die or get seriously injured potentially. And not only that, who's blowing up buildings with no concern. And for me, that's a big problem because I had no idea who the villain was going to be. I knew they were going to introduce her, but I didn't think she'd be the main villain. And deciding to tell her origin story in a Spider-Man movie is also irritating. I would have much rather preferred a character like Mr. Negative because he almost does exactly what she does to a certain extent. And he's actually a Spider-Man villain. Doing her origin story, for example, takes away from a pretty solid subplot, which was dealing with the mutation. And the fact that you had to have Spider-Man create the universal inhibitor, which you know is going to be used in the future to somehow take away mutant abilities, because that's always something that the X-Men battle against, is also an annoyance because it feels that it was rushed in so it can be used in the future. Another issue I have is the lack of Peter's day-to-day life. For instance, where has he been working for the last 5 years? How does he make money to get this big-ass apartment?
Give me rent. You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
And this crazy computer setup. How does he balance work life and Spider-Man? It doesn't explore that at all, and I feel that was a hugely missed opportunity. And if so much time wasn't spent on Jean Grey, I feel like those things could have been expanded on more. This movie also would have been the perfect time to make Peter work for the Daily Bugle, because he has the whole montage where he's fighting Scorpion, Boomerang, and Tarantula. You could have had him taking photos and selling them to the Bugle, especially during the giant street chase. You could have cut to a scene of J. Jonah Jameson saying something like,
Robbie, there's your page one. Masked menace terrorizes town.
out of all the Spider-Man movies, this one had the best opportunity to use him and the Daily Bugle, and they chose not to. And I was hoping they would stray away from it more, but I can't stand Tom's over-reliance on technology. I have never been a fan of the in-mask HUD. It reminds me too much of Iron Man.
Whoa!
Everybody just relax.
And I don't feel like that's nitpicking because I know there's others out there that feel the same. And I know some of you are going to say, stop complaining, the movie's good, it's the best Spider-Man movie ever. And you're allowed to think that, and I love that you loved it. This isn't me saying I didn't like it, I'm just bringing to attention what I think were missed opportunities to fledge out Peter more. Considering they handled Spider-Man so great, and yes, this is a Spider-Man movie, but I'll compare it to Captain America Civil War for a moment. That movie feels more like a Captain America movie to me than an Avengers movie, even though it basically is one. But it tells a very good Captain America story. And compared to Brand New Day, I don't feel this tells the greatest Spider-Man story. It tells a good one, but not a great one. So the final verdict is that Spider-Man Brand New Day is Tom Holland's best Spider-Man movie. But it isn't the best Spider-Man movie we've ever gotten. The visuals are great, the action is fantastic, the story is solid. The banter between Spider-Man and the Punisher is priceless. Savage Hulk being back is amazing.
No banner. Only Hulk.
But even with all the great stuff, the fact that it unfortunately has to set up Avengers Doomsday and the mutant saga after it causes it to have pacing problems and feel overly stuffed at times. But what did you think of Spider-Man Brand New Day? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.